Andy, I'm sure you caught a bit of what I just said, so I won't repeat it. Is this really Facebook's next step? Is it now not to just be the town square and the data collecting company for marketing and other things, but really to become the marketplace?
Yeah, I think it has to be. Like Kevin talked about, you've already got billions of people on the platform. There's only so many people that can join a platform. There's only so many people on Earth, and you're starting to get into those numbers. And so Facebook has to focus on monetization. And what we're seeing at LikeFolio is, pretty slow but standard user growth for Facebook. We saw that at about 3% on a year-over-year basis in terms of people opening an account or downloading the app. But more importantly to us is really the success that we're seeing of Instagram, which, by the way, is the steal of the century. Zuckerberg got that for, I think, $1 billion. And you look, and it's now overtaken in terms of consumers talking about shopping on these platforms and actually buying goods or looking for something to purchase or services. We've got Instagram mentions up 85% year over year, overtaking the general Facebook platform for the very first time. And so I think this speaks to what Kevin was talking about earlier. This is a company, they can't really add that many new users because there's not that many adults in the world that aren't on the platform. But what they can do is monetize their user base and make a lot of money. And from what we're seeing, very successful at that. After a really nice bump they got out of COVID, quarantine, a lot of people staring at their screens instead of doing other things. And that has really held up very nicely into the holiday shopping season and beyond. So I think people are getting a lot more comfortable doing their shopping on Instagram and Facebook. And we'll see that translate, I think, into really nice numbers for the company.
Andy, when I look on the Thinkorswim platform and I look on the company profile, Facebook makes 94% of their money with advertising. Mm-hmm. When is that going to start showing up in some of the metrics? The revenue they get from shopping? Because, Alex, you mentioned that Facebook is the town square. I think their goal long term is to be the mall eventually, right? It'll be like, oh, I'm going to slide over to the Neiman Marcus section or the Macy's or and people, they want people to shop just as much as and they're looking for, but my question is, it doesn't seem to be showing up in revenue yet, any of the shopping metrics. So are we waiting for that? Is that something to happen? Or is that number embedded in the advertising revenue?
Yeah, I would guess that the number is embedded in the advertising number. I think they think of it as an ad network where they just simply allow the user to take all of the steps with the advertiser right there inside the platform. Another little note that we're seeing, the Oculus brand that Facebook owns really did very well over the holiday season. Purchase intent mentions of that up 79% year over year. So, Facebook has a lot of different ways to monetize their enormous user base, and they seem to be doing almost all of them really well.
Andy, along those lines, one thing, at least from, an anecdotal perspective among my social circle or my own use of these platforms, Facebook's kind of methodical, slow but sure kind of movement towards this with the changes that they've made, some, less well accepted than others. Sometimes almost the changes had gone unnoticed, is very different than what we've seen with companies like Snapchat that saw, pretty bad backlash at times on changes that they've made, or Twitter's inability to really make the changes to kind of monetize its user base. Combine that with the fact that it's kind of, at this point, accumulated a critical mass that really, what walkaway movements could really even take place for it to diminish the amount of people that are already using these platforms. So I guess the question is, Andy, from your entrepreneurial kind of, lane that you've built and all of your expertise in that space, has Facebook executed this far better than its competitors, and does that show up in the numbers in terms of happiness of users of these platforms?
Yes, and yes. Facebook has executed brilliantly. I think that others have executed pretty well, but Facebook has far outperformed peers in terms of execution. I'm with you. I don't see the walk away movements or the delete. These things that pop up every once in a while really having much impact at all. We've never seen them have much impact in terms of LikeFolio data. But we have seen it with Snapchat, and we have seen it every once in a while with Twitter. I think Facebook, the biggest threats to Facebook, Kevin mentioned, I think before, regulatory action that could hurt them. A lot of people calling for them to be broken up as a monopoly. I think another one is technological. Is technological in nature. We have a new operating system from Apple update that has some new privacy levels that could really undercut Facebook's ability to target users in a really methodical way. And what that translates to is a lower value for the advertiser. And so that means advertisers would bring less money to the platform because the targeting isn't as great as it is on other platforms or as it was. And so I think that's a decent risk to Facebook. But in terms of outrage or we're quitting Facebook, I think we've kind of gotten past that, and everybody kind of understands that every time people get upset with these platforms, they almost always come back, and that's going to be the way it is, I think, for the foreseeable future.